So, yeah, Wyatt, we worked on this piece about Amsterdam because not only was this a massive psyop, but the psyop was so big, there were some missing pieces that were just so shocking that we needed to highlight them. So I think we should start from the beginning, though.
Yeah.
So it was November 7th, Thursday, Ajax. How do you pronounce it in Dutch?
Ajax, I guess.
Ajax, the local football club from Amsterdam, played Tel Aviv Maccabi. And when Tel Aviv Maccabi comes to town, chaos is likely to ensue, as it did in Athens, Greece, in March, when Tel Aviv Maccabi hooligans, who are notorious for attacking leftists and Palestinians in their own country, beat an Egyptian man so badly on camera that he was hospitalized and rampaged through Athens. So they come into Amsterdam, and everybody is preparing for violence, especially them. They're determined to instigate it. Things happen, which we're going to discuss in a second. And here's how the president of the United States responded. This is the propaganda. I mean, this obviously wasn't written by Biden. He can barely form a sentence without slurring. When he sees a baby, he starts biting the baby. The anti-Semitic attacks on Israeli soccer fans in Amsterdam are despicable and echo dark moments in history when Jews were persecuted. We've been in touch with Israeli and Dutch officials and appreciate Dutch authorities' commitment to holding the perpetrators accountable. We must relentlessly fight anti-Semitism wherever it emerges. That is clearly written by his AIPAC handler. Then we have north of the border, the man who denounced Canadian truckers protesting mandates as having unacceptable views. He shut down the Canadian Charter of Values that his father wrote and imposed emergency law to shut them down. But hooligans that rampaged through Amsterdam, well, they were just innocent pogrom victims, according to Justin Trudeau, PM of Canada. The news out of Amsterdam last night is horrifying. This is a dark moment for our world, and one we have seen before. We've seen it before. I guess he's referring to the Holocaust or Kristallnacht. Yeah. My heart goes out to the victims and the entire Jewish community today. Canada condemns this disgusting anti-Semitism.
Yeah. You remember Kristallnacht, famously instigated by a bunch of Jews who like ransacked a bunch of building sites, stole steel pipes, and then started beating up cops. That was how Kristallnacht started, I remember.
Yeah. There was no, it's as though there was no provocation. Closer to home, we have Ro Khanna, who is one of the most progressive members of Congress, we're told. And he repeats the propaganda. I'm deeply disturbed by the attacks on Israeli civilians in Amsterdam who are simply watching a soccer game. They were simply watching a soccer game. I mean, just remember that line as we progress. Simply watching a soccer game. This ugly anti-Semitism must be condemned, and the Dutch must hold those who committed these crimes accountable. So I, responded quickly to Ro Khanna about simply watching a soccer game. No sound here. This is the Maccabi Tel Aviv hooligans. On the night before, they on one of two nights of them rampaging around Amsterdam. And they're singing a song, "Let the IDF win, to F the Arabs." The song includes the line, "There are no schools in Gaza because there are no children left." You can see the song being sung across Israeli cities as they commit genocide. This is in Dam Square in the center of Amsterdam. So yeah, these are just peace-loving Jews who are just there to watch a soccer game. They're going to hide in their secret annex. That's basically like Anne Frank right there.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, you saw all this hysterical coverage of people talking about how they had to open their homes to poor, innocent, persecuted Jews as though they weren't insane soccer ultras who are just notorious for being hyper violent. I wouldn't let any of those people into my house.
Well, the Dutch authorities let them into their house, and this is what happened when they were let into Ajax Stadium. There was a moment of silence for the victims of the Valencia flood, and Israelis were actually already mocking the victims, taunting them because Spain had enacted a at least partial arms embargo on Israel. And so here's the Tel Aviv Maccabi cheering section. This is a moment of silence. Utterly disgusting. And they're doing it because of the Spanish arms embargo.
Right.
I mean, they're there to show total disrespect for the continent of Europe. And then it devolved from there. Apparently, the things were peaceful at the stadium. And there was a police presence at the stadium. And there was a piece in Yediot Aharonot, Ynet, the Israeli publication, about how the Tel Aviv Maccabi fans walked out of the stadium, and they were just looking for peace. They were just looking for coexistence with the local residents there. Here's an excerpt from the piece. This is quoting one of their ultras, their hooligans. "We didn't know that the organized violent reaction from the other side was coming. Leaving the game, 10 Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were roaming the train looking for a Palestinian to beat up, in their words. They didn't find one. They arrived at the central station. At first, everything was fine." Well, they were just innocent Anne Frank reenactors looking to beat up one of the Untermenschen on a train in a city that wasn't theirs. And unfortunately, they couldn't find one. Everything was fine. Then eventually they got beat up, right?
A pogrom. A pogrom is that's actually, yeah.
I guess, going back a little bit in our timeline, this is the day that they arrived before the game. Here's what they were doing all around central Amsterdam. Because, if you go to Amsterdam, there are homes that have like anarchist squatters have taken over some homes there. It's like a part of the local culture. And they put up Palestinian flags and other flags. And these thugs were so horrified to see this that they just decided that it was their city and they could commit vandalism. And in many cases, they were permitted to. And so here's them ripping down one of the flags. They proceeded to burn them as the local police chief confirmed. This is somebody's home. Just imagine if that happened in your city. And, they were escorted to carry out this rampage by none other than the Mossad.
Yeah.
So what's going on here? I mean, what was the Mossad doing, Wyatt?
Well, I would assume the Mossad was doing what they tend to do, which is to, quote unquote, protect the interests of Israel and Israelis abroad, which presumably means that they were there to act as kind of bodyguards and protect the Maccabi fans as they marauded through the city and, on this kind of night of mayhem and tried to find Palestinians to beat up, or at the very least, anybody of some kind of Arab-looking complexion, right? I mean, I don't know what else the Mossad would have been attempting to do during all this. They certainly weren't attempting to stop any of the violence.
Yeah, I mean, they could have also been there to instrumentalize it or orchestrate it.
Right.
And I mean, as we reported, we highlighted a video by a 16-year-old YouTuber who's very popular in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, named Bender. And he was really the only member of the media on the ground for the night of violence by Maccabi Ultra thugs. And one of the things he showed that I think was really important to show was the military style operation of these thugs. How they moved in a pack of about 100. They didn't run because running leads to them dispersing, and they had clear leadership. And they were there with Israeli intelligence agents, and many of them, as we've confirmed, were members of the Israeli military, reservists who had participated in the genocide in Gaza. So we should go through some of his footage really quickly, because I mean, and tell us, you hold on, I have these ads, but we worked on a piece on how Bender actually documented them attacking cops.
Right. And he documented the arrest of a kid. He said they were using children that appeared to be no older than 12 to kind of as the sort of vanguard of this group of thugs, because obviously they understood that the police would let go a kid, that a young child is not going to get arrested or thrown in jail overnight. So they apparently were deploying children as their human shields while they went around on this rampage throughout Amsterdam. And that's I don't know how else to interpret it. That's who was apparently detained, according to Bender, for having assaulted undercover police officers. I have no reason to doubt anything that he published. He kind of emerged as the lone journalistic voice of reason, the lone journalist who was willing to actually show what happened and then refused to back down after initially publishing it, has not retracted anything that he put out, any factually correct journalism that he produced. He's basically the only one, with the possible exception of this Dutch photojournalist whose work was stolen by a bunch of mainstream media outlets and used to portray a totally 180-degree backwards scenario in which the Israelis were the victims. Those are the only two journalists that I'm aware of. I guess now we have the Left Laser guys that actually went and interviewed some of the victims of the Israeli violence. But other than those handful of journalists, pretty much every journalist who's written about this has emerged as either a coward, a liar, or in some cases, a plagiarist.
Yeah, every single outlet. It's like they were mandated to distill massive amounts of disinformation. They called the attacks on these thugs anti-Semitic without any basis at all, when no Jews from the local Amsterdam community were attacked, except anti-Zionist Jews who were protesting the Gaza genocide, who were attacked by the Israeli hooligans. I mean, Washington Post, democracy dies and Zionist lies over there. I mean, it was just, the whole framing was completely fake. It was anti-Semitic attack on Jews in the streets of Amsterdam. The New York Times, same thing. I mean, what you expect from the New York Post and Barry Weiss's Free Press, making this out to be a second Kristallnacht, of course, but all of mainstream media was like this, and only a 16-year-old Dutch YouTuber did the job the rest of the media refused to do. He was there on the scene filming as these hooligans, many of whom had participated in the Gaza genocide, were rampaging through the streets of Amsterdam after their game, looking for violence, looking to harm people, looking to attack Palestinians and Muslims. And let's turn to some of Bender's report. So, there are subtitles. I'll try to read them.
En je merkt al eigenlijk dat de sfeer wat minder gezellig is. Er worden vuurwerkbommetjes afgestoken. En ze zijn nu aan het rennen en aan het schreeuwen. Ik weet niet wat er... Nee. Ik weet niet wat er precies gebeurt.
I don't know what's happening right now.
Het is wel een flinke stoet.
A large crowd. Those are the hooligans over there from Tel Aviv, Maccabi. There they are.
Oh, ze zijn palen uit de grond aan het
metal
delven.
poles from the ground. They look really... That's exactly what Anne Frank would do.
Ze hebben palen uit de grond gejat. Ik denk om zichzelf te leren van mensen die ze lastigvallen. Oh, ze doen nu allemaal maskers op.
Now they're putting on masks. Remember, the New York mayor Eric Adams has pushed legislation to eliminate masks because Palestine Solidarity protesters, who are largely peaceful, have been wearing them. To ban masks from being worn in public. But here they're putting on masks with metal poles that they're pulling up from the street in order to attack people around Amsterdam, these poor pogrom victims.
Er is geen politie, dus ik weet niet
No
precies.
police around.
Het is nogal een heel gespannen sfeertje. Oké.
Here they go.
Ja, politie.
Here's police. So here's a lady running away from them.
You can hear her screaming and crying.
Screaming and crying because there's a band of genocide zombies storming through her city.
Oké. Ze gaan achter mensen
They're
aan.
running after people now.
Veel politie.
And you can hear the tings of things getting hit with metal poles too.
Yeah, you can hear metal poles.
Oh, palen naar de politie. Oh,
Oh, metal poles are being thrown at the police car.
I wonder who did that. Maybe it's
Who's done
the
that?
Israeli thugs that just ripped them up, a minute ago in this same video feed. The precious, sweet children of Zion.
Throwing poles at the police car. Attacking cops.
auto. Zo. Zo.
Whoa.
Ze zijn een beetje uit elkaar. De taxichauffeur reed ook expres doorheen. Ze hadden van die bouwvakkerspalen uit de grond gehaald.
They took the metal pipes from this construction site and started throwing them at people and the police vans. I mean, he's just announcing this in real time. It's like, there wasn't some calculated plot to make things up. And you can pretty much see what's going on in the background.
En die op andere mensen gegooid en op die politiebussen. We zijn weer eens, zoals altijd, de enige media die er is. Politie vlucht een soort van vrijheid. Hij keert terug, alleen hij is in zijn eentje. Je hebt wel...
This is the van they attacked and he's all alone and they're surrounding the van.
De groep is hier. Hij heeft duidelijk meer versterking nodig, want dit gaat anders niks worden. Er staan 2 busjes.
Yeah, remember this image of them surrounding the police van when we come up with the press, the statement that the chief of Amsterdam police came up with later, the day later.
Yeah. Foreign thugs attacking a police van with total impunity.
Het politie-signaal is uit. Het leek op een vechtpartij, maar we weten niet precies met wie. Ik denk met mensen die tegen ze zijn. Het lijkt erop alsof ze misschien in dit hotel verblijven. Alleen ze trekken de stad in. En ze lijken niet bang. Ze schreeuwen veel.
They don't look afraid.
Ik versta het niet.
That's
Dus als je dat
how
vertalen
pogroms
in
usually
de
go.
commands.
The victims decide to leave their hotel and angrily march, unafraid, towards the city center. That's usually how they start and go.
Yeah.
In de comments. Sir, what's happening?
I don't know.
All right. Well, moving ahead, I think this is a point where the thugs start attacking undercover cops, which we'll watch in a second. Here we go. And so there are children apparently among the thugs who are like 12 years old.
We hebben gewoon
They have
kinderen,
kids
ik denk,
walking
nog
around
geen
with
12
sticks on
jaar
the
oud,
front,
lopen met
like human
stokken
shields,
door de kleine
looking for a
straatjes
fight.
voorop. En die zijn ruzie aan het zoeken. Dus je vindt een
There's an arrest
arrestatie
taking
plaats.
place. Finally, someone's arrested.
Kijk, ze hebben dus de kinderen...
Look, they have these kids not even 12 years old, barely 1.5 meters tall, who just attacked these undercover police officers with a stick. So these are police detectives from the Netherlands police. You can see their unmarked vans, and they're getting attacked by 12-year-old Israeli psychopath genocide zombies in their own city. And none of this was reported by mainstream media, Western corporate media. It just didn't make the cut. And it was only because of Bender, the scrappy 16-year-old reporter's presence as the only reporter on the scene that we know this took place.
Ik denk echt jonge kinderen, nog geen 12 jaar oud, dus een jochie van 1,50. En die heeft net gewoon een politieagent.
That sounds like sounds that pogrom victims would make, a giant fireworks explosion.
Undercover gewoon aangevallen met een stok. Maar ja, je kan ook moeilijk een kind van 12 het busje
It's hard to
ingooien.
arrest a kid like that, but it looks like it's going to happen. He must have done something really bad.
Maar het lijkt op wat er nu wel gaat gebeuren. Oké, de ME komt er nu uit met schild en stok. Ik denk dat het nu aanvallen wordt. Alleen wat ze niet beseffen is, Tel Aviv heeft ook schild en
Tel
stok.
Aviv also has shield and stick. I mean, it's just so obvious. So basically, it all ends up, Wyatt, with the police kind of escorting them away.
Right. They concentrate them sort of in a small area where they seem like they're going to get them on buses and kind of escort them out of the city center. But for some reason, the police decided to do this right next to one of these buildings of squatters that you were mentioning that has Palestinian flags. So then, as you know, the Israelis get halfway on the bus, and then half of them who are still outside decide to start pelting the building with rocks while they're surrounded by police who apparently didn't do anything about that. So, that first effort to evacuate, to rescue the poor Israelis didn't go according to plan because, as usual, the Israelis decided to unleash their psychopathic tendencies on whoever was around them.
Here it is.
Alleen daar zijn ze het volgens mij ook niet helemaal mee eens.
They don't agree with going on
Ze
the
werken
bus.
absoluut
They're not
niet mee
complying
met
with
het
the bus
busidee.
idea.
De
Half of
helft
them are
zit erin,
getting
de
in,
helft
half are
rent
trying to
weg.
get out.
En er worden stenen
And they started
neergegooid.
throwing rocks
Oh,
at
dat is op
private
dat
Dutch
huis.
homes
Dat
again.
is op dat huis met al die vlaggen. De politie heeft
They're throwing it at the house with Palestinian flags.
iets
The police did
niet
something
zeer
that wasn't
tactisch gedaan.
tactful.
Hier zit een groot,
Here's a
volgens mij
building full of
kraakpand.
squatters
Met
with Palestinian flags on it.
allemaal Palestijnse
And the Israeli thugs are throwing flags at a private Dutch home.
vlaggen. Er worden stenen op de ruiten gegooid. Ze hebben gisteravond de vlaggen
Last night
op
they
er
put
vanaf
on
getrokken en
those flags and
verbrand.
burned them.
En nu
Now
komen
we're
we
back at the
precies
same
hier
spot
uit.
again.
Ze
They don't want to
willen
get
de
in the
bus
bus,
niet
and the
in.
other half is
De
throwing
andere
rocks.
helft is stenen.
So, like, they're surrounded by cops. You can see in the green neon vests and jackets, those are cops surrounding these Israeli hooligans, and they're allowed to throw rocks at private Dutch homes. And we heard none of this from the police department spokesman or police chief. And they're not getting arrested.
Stenen aan het gooien. Hier, kom daar kijken. Oh, de taxichauffeurs. Er worden weer stenen gegooid. Het blijft maar doorgaan.
They're throwing rocks at taxi drivers. I mean, they had attacked Muslim taxi drivers the night before. And so, a lot of them did get their asses beat. Let's not conceal that fact. Ajax has their own band of hooligans who happen to be local Dutch people. And some of them are Muslim. And also a lot of Muslims came out, including taxi drivers, to defend themselves. And the people of Amsterdam have a right to defend themselves against this marauding band of foreign genocide zombies and fascistic hooligans. And that's precisely what they did. And because some of them got their asses beat, we're being told that this was a pogrom. But look at how they were behaving all around Amsterdam with Mossad escorts. And Israel, played it up to the hilt, pretending that they were being kidnapped by like foreign Hamas agents. And the Guardian actually seriously reported that the Israeli army was sending planes to save them. And this is from the Guardian. Israeli Transport Minister Miri Regev's office said in a statement she had spoken to her Dutch counterpart about the aerial rescue operation of Israeli citizens from Amsterdam. And she asked the Dutch transport minister to give the planes permission to use the airport to rescue the Israelis. I mean, how is this taken seriously? And they were rescued by the police right there when they should have all been arrested. Palestine solidarity demonstrators weren't even allowed to protest. They get tear gassed. They get beaten when they come out in the streets of any European city. Israeli hooligans, they get the VIP treatment from cops. Cops disappear so they can attack local people.
And then when they do appear,
of a bus for free to their hotel.
Yep. And then a free flight back home to celebrate.
So total violation of Dutch sovereignty with the full permission of the Dutch government. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, we should look into how exactly the Dutch responded, right? We had
yeah,
this statement from the prime minister, um, who condemned anti-Semitism naturally. We had the police chief who uh, who, despite knowing what happened to his officers and despite admitting that this violence was instigated by the Israelis in the first place, that they started it by um, ripping down flags and vandalizing a cab, setting flags on fire. Then he basically he ends this little press conference by saying, well, first he acknowledged that peace returned only after the Tel Aviv Maccabi supporters were, quote, accompanied by the police back to their hotels with these buses. And
yeah.
then he ended by saying, I can imagine that Israelis feel unsafe. As mentioned before, their well-being is our top priority.
This is
Obviously not the well-being of the police who they were attacking, not your own well-being, not protecting yourselves or your residents, the people who actually live in your city, from these thugs and fascists. No, no, your top priority is making sure that they get home safe and sound after rampaging through the city, after beating up taxi drivers and burning down taxis. They need to just be shepherded home back to their hotels so they can get a good night's sleep for their rescue flight in the morning. You know,
yeah. That's Police Chief Peter Holle, Dutch police chief. And we reached out to the Amsterdam police or the Dutch police in their Amsterdam office. We reached the spokesperson who referred us to Chief Holle's statement because she herself was not able to address the confirmed reports, the documented video, the video documentation of cops being attacked. She refused to address it when we questioned her on it. But also, we know Dutch citizens were attacked rampantly by these Tel Aviv hooligans the day before the match with Ajax. And here is Left Laser interviewing some of those local citizens.
How did the Maccabi hooligans behave towards local Amsterdammers?
Different from moment to moment. Every time someone with a Palestinian a symbol or anything walked by, they got pretty violent, middle fingers, but also like physical violence.
Then I passed the monument and they threw beer at me and they spitted at me in the Damstraat. But it was like a very aggressive tense over here. Like, yeah. Yeah.
So Maccabi hooligans threw beer at you and they spit at you.
Yeah, and it was okay. I'm okay, but
how did that make you feel though?
Worried. I don't like aggressiveness in my city. Amsterdam has always been a tolerant city towards others, but when a group so aggressively comes in, I don't know, make me not feel at home anymore.
At one moment, there was someone who was pulled off the bike, and we walked to there to just see what happened. And at that point, a glass bottle was thrown at us from the crowd of Maccabi supporters. So no, it didn't really feel safe at all.
Maccabi hooligans threw glass at pro-Palestinian people just cycling by.
Yeah.
And did the police intervene?
No, they told us to step back, go away, or they even said, then you shouldn't have stood there.
So they blamed you for being attacked.
They did.
So yeah, incredible stuff.
he says, I didn't feel at home in my city. Well, the police made it pretty clear it's not his city. It's the Israeli thug city. They get to do whatever they want, and the people there just have to deal with it. And as the last guy said, you shouldn't be there. You're not supposed to be here in your own city, living your life as normally. You're supposed to be, walking on eggshells around these poor, oppressed soccer hooligans.
And we have to ask why. Why? What are they so afraid of? I think the answer is obvious. And they're not allowed, their leadership is not allowed to tell the truth. Their police chief is not allowed to tell the truth about his own men being attacked and women being attacked by these thugs. The Dutch king has to condemn this as a pogrom. not by the Israelis. And Netherlands has to keep the weapons flowing to genocidal Israel. And I mean, we'll get to this in a second. This was one of the biggest examples of disinformation being spread that I've seen since beheaded babies on October 7th, the Hamas mass rape hoax, and all of the other lies spread since October 7th. And it was done for the same precise reason, which is to convince Western leadership that Israel, as an ethnocracy, an exclusivist Jewish state, as an apartheid project, is necessary to protect Jews, to give them a sanctuary, because they're endangered everywhere else. And they will be in danger unless Israel is given the right to act in any way it deems necessary to crush Hamas and to destroy anti-Semitism, when in reality, Israel and the Zionist ideology depend on anti-Semitism as the fuel for their military occupation and apartheid machine in order to justify their state as a sanctuary for Jews, when in fact, it is the most dangerous place in the world to live as a Jew, and it destabilizes not just everything around it, but any place that its population goes to in order to advance that project, whether as quote unquote diplomats through the Israeli embassy or as soccer hooligans. So this was a ploy. It was a propaganda ploy, and I question the extent to which it was, I don't want to say staged, but orchestrated in order to provoke, if not anti-Semitism, then a violent response from people who are being attacked. And now we have Israelis, all over the world. They're diplomats, they're Hasbara trolls, they're government propagandists declaring that the West has made this grave mistake by allowing Muslims into their countries, and that Israel will be their teacher and will teach them how to fight the terror from within, when the terror is clearly emanating straight from Tel Aviv. And this is how the Tel Aviv Maccabi hooligans returned triumphantly to their city after carrying out this violent mission, which quickly transformed into a successful anti-Semitism hoax psyop. They're chanting, IDF will F the Arabs, death to Arabs. Why are there no schools in Gaza? There are no children left there. This is their fight song.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the footage of the Russians coming in to liberate Auschwitz. You know, where you just see all these, poor, oppressed, very sad people who've clearly been through it. That's the kind of vibe I get from that video.
Definitely. I mean, it really recalls the liberation of the camps and the aftermath of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, when SS officers stormed through Berlin. I mean, that's what I think of when I see that, except they make me think of the SS officers. I mean, those are some serious, what Yeshayahu Leibovich, you don't know who he is, look him up, would have called Judeo-Nazis. That is just Nazism in action. I mean, everybody has their hooligans. Everybody has their soccer hooligans, but not everybody's football or soccer, or I'm American, soccer hooligans actually have a dual role as members of a genocidal Panzer or Einsatzgruppen division that is currently slaughtering the besieged native Untermenschen in their death camp. That's what makes this unique. And not all soccer hooligans can roam around the world causing violence and then claim that they are history's greatest victims simply because of their ethno-religious heritage. That's what makes this totally unique.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right. They do function as basically a paramilitary force that's not subject to any laws of war and just gets to go rampage through cities and do whatever they want, and then they get apologies from the country's residents, or their leadership at least, for anybody who fought back.